Welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalist of Northboro. Our guest minister today is the Reverend Jane Thixton. First Parish is proud to be an intentionally welcoming community, open and affirming to all people. I want to issue a particularly warm welcome to those of you who are visiting for the first time. Please join us for coffee hour and conversation in the parish hall after the service. I have a few announcements today. Open mic is this week on Friday at 7 p.m. in the parish hall. We've started to do a monthly church outing, and our outing this month is on Friday, December 13th from 3:45 to 7:30 at New England Botanical Garden. Some of you might know it as Tower Hill. Reverend Steve, they have a beautiful light display there. So Reverend Steve has purchased some tickets. Please contact him to see if there are still tickets available for that. The women of the church are invited to celebrate the winter solstice on Wednesday, December 18th at the home of Corey Woodcock. There'll be a potluck supper at 6, followed by the solstice ritual. On Friday, December 20th, the Meeting House Art Center will be presenting Laurie Diamond and Fred Abatelli. They're a local family band. They will be singing holiday songs and favorites from the 70s. You can look in your perspective. There's a link there to purchase tickets in advance. And mark your calendars for the second annual pancake breakfast. On December 29th, the governing board will be cooking and serving their favorite pancakes from 10 a.m. until noon. Since we are in multiple locations, please take a moment to greet each other. Hi, Zoom, people at Zoom. Oh. One announcement.
Just a word on our monthly events. This month, we are penultimate potluck was kind of squeezed out. And that's okay, because there are other really exciting things happen, like the pancake breakfast on one end and the concert, which takes place the same night. So we are not going to be doing that in December. We will put that notice out. But we hope to see everybody in January, second Friday from the end of the month. Thank you.
exciting. We'll be singing it in a little bit, but not quite that way. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be with you again, and it's a good morning to be together, nice and chilly. When winter's darkness spreads across the land and cold seeps through our thickest coats, we hurry here, drawn by the warmth of faces familiar and new, to the welcoming walls of this house. Here, for this hour, we open ourselves to new understanding, new reassurance and hope. For this is a place where truth, love, and challenge meet. Welcome. It's a good morning to be together. And our chalice lighting words are by Reverend Cynthia Landrum. In the bleak and cold winter, we gather ourselves in to light the fire, to warm our spirits, to kindle the flame of love and hope. And Anne has something for you.
We're entering a time of year where the earth grows colder, the animals begin to hibernate, and the days become continually shorter. This morning marks the beginning of the season of Advent. In the Christian tradition, Advent is the beginning of the church year and the looking forward toward the birth of Jesus and the celebration of spiritual light. Each week until Christmas, we light a new candle on the Advent wreath, a circle of evergreens, along with each of the preceding candles. The flame of each new candle reminds us that something is happening now, but something more is still to come. The light of Advent grows brighter and brighter, guiding us toward personal peace, shared joy, and more love. This morning, we light the first candle. We light this candle as a symbol of hope and expectation. May we dare to open the shadowy places in our lives and memories to the healing light of community. With the creative power of hope, we express our longing for peace and prepare our hearts to be transformed.
So let's sing our opening hymn. It's Deck the Halls, number 235 in your gray hymn book. And the words will be on the screen. Deck the halls with boughs of holly, la 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 la. 'Tis the season to be jolly, la 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 la. Don we now our gay apparel, la 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 la. Troll the ancient Yuletide carol, la 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 la. See the blazing Yule before us, la 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 la. Strike the harp and join the chorus, la 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 la. Follow me in merry measure, la 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 la. While I tell of Yuletide treasure, la 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 la. Past away the old year passes, la 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 la. Hail the new ye lads and lasses, la 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 la. Sing we joyous all together, la 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 la. Heedless of the wind and weather, la 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 la. Oh. Things out of order a little. So, yes, in a spirit of reverence, we take a moment now to give witness to some of the joys and sorrows of our community. We do so through the sharing of those milestone personal events that call for our prayers and support, our praise and celebration. So please come forward in a spirit of meditation or prayer. So please settle in a little more comfortably. Close your eyes if you wish. Allow your body to just relax into your sacred space here or at home. Breathe in deeply. Breathe out slowly. Breathing in compassion. Breathing out peace. O creative spirit of life, we give thanks for the wonders there are, the human quest for meaning, for the poetry and myth of human imagination, for the bright stars in the night, for the joyful sound of voices uplifted in song, for the good company of people in houses of fellowship such as ours. We would be mindful of the pain within the world, the loneliness, the hunger, the poverty which remains. We would join in the faith that in the midst of all which besets us, we are called to be faithful to life and faithful to each other. The spirit of Christmas is a spirit of hope and faith in the amazing possibilities which are open to
Right,
us.
could you make it full screen?
Let us nurture this hope and this faith and proclaim it to the world. And I invite you into a moment of silent reflection.
Our financial offering each week is shared between the general operating fund of this church and a designated nonprofit organization. For the month of December, we are setting aside half the plate for Ansar of Worcester. A little bit about them from their website. Ansar is the title given to those who opened up their hearts and homes to early Muslims migrating to the city of Medina almost 1,400 years ago. The word means the supporters. Today, we are striving to live up to the same exemplary tradition of welcoming and servicing the needs of refugees and new arrivals in our beautiful city. Ansar of Worcester was launched in 2017 and is devoted in large part to helping refugees and immigrants who have been resettled in our community. We also extend our efforts to helping local residents who are otherwise underserved. We passionately believe in upholding and respecting the dignity of all humans and providing them a safe and caring environment. May we continue to be as generous as we are able.
We have a time for all ages today, and it should be familiar to most of you. It's "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," the classic poem by Clement Clark Moore. Yeah. So here it goes. "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plum danced in their heads. And Mama, in her kerchief and I in my cap, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap, when out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the luster of midday to the objects below. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, and I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. I'm sure that's how it goes. And the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work. And he filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, he sprang to, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team, gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
Today's reading is taken from The Battle for Christmas by Stephen Nissenbaum, a book that shows how the holiday changed from a rowdy, drunken celebration to a domestic one. Victory in the battle for Christmas in America resulted from a convergence of interest that melded a variety of groups and classes. In the first place, the domestic reform of Christmas was an enterprise of patricians, fearful of their authority that domestic reform led to the development of a commercial Christmas trade. As such a trade developed, merchants needed the streets to be free of drunks and rowdies in order to secure them for Christmas shoppers. And the shoppers themselves needed to feel secure in the streets. In short, by mid-century, a variety of interests had converged to agree on the point that Christmas deserved civic recognition. This point brought together laborers and capitalists, producers and consumers, clients and patrons. By the 1860s, in all but a handful of states, there seemed to have been no significant opposition to making December 25th a legal holiday. Before long, there was virtual unanimity on that score, and it has continued to the present. Today, it is impossible to imagine the date as a purely private, voluntary event. Indeed, Christmas has become the most important single civic celebration in the American calendar year.
Well, it's December 1st today. Thanksgiving is over. We've celebrated or avoided Black Friday and Buy Local Saturday. Cyber Monday and Giving Tuesday are still ahead, tomorrow and the next day. People are decorating their homes with lights and greens. I've put up my candles in the windows and wreath on the door, and that's it for this year, since I'll be going away for Christmas. But, you see it everywhere already. Holiday songs are playing now, and there are concerts and parties happening all this month. As much as we recognize the religious diversity of this nation, Christmas is still the biggest holiday celebrated this time of year. And whether we assign it any religious significance or not, it is celebrated by many Unitarian Universalists. Well, what would you think if the celebration of Christmas were made illegal? Pretty outrageous, right? But that's exactly what our own religious forebears, the Puritans, did. Yeah, in Massachusetts between 1659 and 1681, it was illegal to celebrate Christmas, and it was suppressed for the first 2 centuries of European settlement in New England. People were expected to go to work as usual, and the day wasn't even marked on calendars. But the celebration the Puritans were trying, not altogether successfully, to suppress was not at all like the Christmas as we celebrate it today. It was a raucous, rowdy, entire season of excess when people could behave badly and get away with it. It involved behavior that most of us would find offensive and even shocking today. Rowdy public displays of excessive eating and drinking, the mockery of established authority, aggressive begging, often involving even the threat of doing harm, and even the invasion of wealthy homes. Historian Stephen Nissenbaum has written a fabulous book. It's a Pulitzer Prize finalist, and it's called The Battle for Christmas. And in it, he describes the evolution of this holiday in America. Much of what I'm talking about today is drawn from the book. So the tradition that the settlers brought to New England came from an agricultural economy where good food wasn't available year-round. Nissenbaum says, early modern Europe was above all a world of scarcity. Few people ate much good food at all, and for everyone, the availability of fresh food was seasonally determined. Late summer and early fall would have been the time of fresh vegetables, but December was the season, the only season, for fresh meat. Animals could not be slaughtered until the weather was cold enough to ensure the meat would not go bad. And any meat saved for the rest of the year would have to be preserved and rendered less palatable by salting. December was also the month when the year's supply of beer or wine was ready to drink. And for farmers, too, the period marked the start of a season of leisure. Little wonder, then, that this was a time of celebratory excess. Excess took many forms. Reveling could easily become rowdiness, lubricated by alcohol. Merrymaking could edge into making trouble. Christmas was a season of misrule, a time when ordinary behavioral restraints could be violated with impunity. Christmas misrule meant that not only hunger, but also anger and lust could be expressed in public. But the idea of misrule wasn't just bad behavior. It was a ritualized way of dealing with the inequities of society, of their society. As Nissenbaum says, Christmas was an occasion when the social hierarchy itself was symbolically turned upside down in a gesture that inverted designated roles of gender, age, and class. The most common ritual of social inversion during the Christmas season involved something like our modern notion of charity. But it was usually the poor themselves who initiated the exchange, and it was enacted face to face in rituals that would strike many of us today as an intolerable invasion of privacy. At other times of the year, it was the poor who owed goods, labor, and deference to the rich. But on this occasion, the tables were turned, literally. The poor, most often bands of boys and young men, claimed the right to march into the houses of the well-to-do, enter their halls, and receive gifts of food, drink, and sometimes money as well. And the rich had to let them in, essentially to hold open house. Christmas was a time when peasants, servants, and apprentices exercised the right to demand that their wealthier neighbors and patrons treat them as if they were wealthy and powerful. The lord of the manor let the peasants in and feasted them. In return, the peasants offered something of true value in a paternalistic society: their goodwill. The Puritans were Protestant reformers who were aware that there was no mention of a date in the Bible for Jesus' birth, and that December 25th had been selected by the church to coincide with the pagan celebrations. They felt that if Christians were supposed to celebrate the birth of Christ, it would be in the Bible. By the mid-1700s, there was a feeling that the observance of Christmas would be rendered less obnoxious if the holiday were celebrated with piety and moderation, purged of its seasonal excesses. And by the early 1800s, the movement to reclaim Christmas took the form of holding church services on December 25th. Nissenbaum says, in the forefront of those leading the movement were the Universalists. Largely a rural sect, Universalists openly celebrated Christmas from the earliest stages of their existence in New England. The Universalist community in Boston held a special Christmas Day a special Christmas Day service in 1789, even before their congregation was officially recognized. And the Unitarians were close behind. Compared with Universalists, Unitarians were more genteel and, for all their theological liberalism, more socially conservative. Unitarians were calling for the public observance of Christmas by 1800. They did so in full knowledge that it was not a biblically sanctioned holiday, and that December 25th was probably not the day on which Jesus was born. They wished to celebrate the holiday not because God had ordered them to do so, but because they themselves wished to do so. And they celebrated it in the hope that their own observance might help purge the holiday of its associations with seasonal excess and disorder. By 1817, businesses were closed and churches were holding services on Christmas Day. But it only lasted 3 years. What happened, Nissenbaum writes, was that in New England, as elsewhere, religion failed to transform Christmas from a season of misrule into an occasion of quieter pleasure. That transformation would, however, shortly take place, but not at the hands of Christianity. The house of ale would not be vanquished by the house of God, but a new faith that was beginning to sweep over American society. It was the religion of domesticity, which would be represented at Christmas time not by Jesus of Nazareth, but a newer and more worldly deity, Santa Claus. Santa Claus was essentially invented by Clement Clark Moore with this poem that we just heard, A Visit from St. Nicholas, better known to us as The Night Before Christmas. It was written in 1822, and within 10 years was being widely published every year at Christmas time. Moore's Santa Claus was only loosely based on an old Dutch tradition about a bishop who was St. Nicholas. The main difference was that Moore's Santa Claus had become a plebeian of the lower classes. This Santa Claus came into the house like the revelers and wassailers, but instead of demanding food and drink, he was a bringer of gifts. Moore was of the class of wealthy landowners in New York City who felt threatened by the Christmas revels and the turn that the tradition of misrule had taken in an urban setting in an industrial economy, not the setting it was designed for. What the concept of Santa Claus did was to bring Christmas indoors, within the family. It domesticated it. It made children the focus of the holiday. This turned the old ritual of misrule on its side. Instead of giving to the dependents who farmed the gentry's land, now the well-off were giving to the dependents within their own household. But the wife and the children already received the best food and drink of the household. So what could they be given? This was when the idea of the Christmas present was born. Christmas presents had to be luxury items because otherwise there's nothing to distinguish them from the daily provision of needs that happens within the family. And this is when Christmas became commercial. Every generation since then has bemoaned the commercialization of Christmas, something that always feels like a recent phenomenon, different from the purity of the holiday we experienced in our childhood. But before he was even 20 years old, Santa Claus was being used by merchants to market their products. This new child-centered Christmas posed new problems of its own. As Nissenbaum says, consumerism was coming to supplant chaos as the new problem of the holiday season. People were worried that it was creating greedy, selfish children. Nissenbaum tells us that this is the context in which the Christmas tree became an American holiday tradition. The introduction of the Christmas tree began a tradition where children gave as well as received. And Unitarians are central to this part of the story. Charles Follen, a radical German immigrant and Harvard professor and also Unitarian minister, had a Christmas tree in his house in 1835. You know, the Follen Church in Lexington is named after him, of course. So his tree wasn't the first Christmas tree in America, but it was written about by two Unitarian women friends of his, and the practice quickly spread throughout the country. Harriet Martineau, a British Unitarian author visiting the United States, was present when the Follens surprised their son with a tree decked out with presents and candles. Catherine Sedgwick, an American Unitarian author, wrote a short story that same year that featured a Christmas tree very much like the one at the Follen's house. The story, according to Nissenbaum, deals with the redemption of a sinful mother by her selfless young child. Unitarians of the time were changing the way Americans viewed children. Having rejected the belief in original sin, they saw children as innocent. In the words of Nissenbaum, child-rearing practices were linked to theological beliefs. Whether parents chose to beat their children, for example, or lavish attention on them at Christmas was linked to whether they believed in original sin. A central tenet of early 19th century Unitarians was the belief that human beings were not born for damnation. They believed that the will should be trained rather than broken. It might be imperfect, but it was not fundamentally corrupt. Louisa May Alcott is another Unitarian woman of that day who wrote an extensive Christmas scene into her most famous novel, Little Women. In that scene, the four girls voluntarily give their Christmas presents to a poor neighboring family. And Unitarian Margaret Fuller wrote for Universalist Horace Greeley's newspaper, the New York Tribune, the following thoughts about Christmas. Christmas would seem to be the day particularly sacred to children, she says, and something of this feeling shows itself among us. The evergreen tree is often reared for the children on Christmas evening, and its branches cluster with little tokens that may at least give them a sense that the world is rich and that there are some in it who care to bless them. It is a charming sight to see their glittering eyes and well worth much trouble in preparing the Christmas tree. My colleague, Reverend Richard Nugent, writes about some other Unitarians who have influenced our celebrations of Christmas. He tells of political cartoonist Thomas Nast, a Unitarian whose 24 years of Christmas drawings gave us the image of Santa Claus as we know him today. This includes introducing the idea that Santa's home was in the North Pole. In this way, Nugent says Santa didn't belong to any one country, but to the world. The idea of having Santa, or of him having a workshop with elves to, elves to help him make the presents and everything, that was also Nast's. Nast also introduced the European tradition of kissing under the mistletoe to the United States. And the English Unitarian Charles Dickens shaped the way we view Christmas with his classic A Christmas Carol in 1843. According to Nugent, Dickens helped recraft the spirit of Christmas toward a focus on the family and the spirit of generosity. Dickens succeeded in transforming Christmas from a sacred festival into a family feast, accessible to lower middle class families. And Dickens does not focus on the religious nature of Christmas. The Christ event is not the focus, but rather how one lives a life in keeping with the spirit of Christ. It is the theology of Jesus, not about Jesus, that is found on the pages of A Christmas Carol. The Christmas Carol we just heard, it came upon a midnight clear, was written in 1849 by Unitarian minister Edmund Hamilton Sears. And in 1864, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, another Unitarian, wrote, I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. These songs focus on the theme of peace and justice, lifting up the spirit of Jesus' message. And a Universalist, James Pierpont, wrote Jingle Bells in 1857. By the turn of this last century, Christmas had pretty much evolved into the holiday as we know it today. I'm talking the turn into the 1900s, not the 2000s. One by one, states made it an official holiday so that workers can have a day off. Far from having a month of leisure, the lower classes might now see their work increase in December as they make and sell the Christmas products. The only vestiges of the old celebration are on New Year's Eve, when people still often drink to excess and revel in the streets. There is still a tradition of holiday giving to those less fortunate than we are. No longer do they come to our doors to demand it, trick or treat style, but there is a sense that this time of year is a time to open our hearts and our pocketbooks. The Salvation Army rings bells out in the cold and solicitations come in the mail. This time of year is time to remember the poor. And Unitarians in particular have shaped the holiday into one that lifts up the innocence of children and the values of peace and justice and generosity. They have kept the focus on celebrating the spirit of Jesus. Unitarian Universalists today can still celebrate Christmas in this spirit. The real spirit of the season is in the values we hold dear, and perhaps a bit of eggnog. Acting from those values makes this season holy. May you all have a holy season. And let's sing once more another Advent hymn, Once in Royal David City. It's number 228 in your Ray hymn book. Amen. Once in Royal David City, Shepherds came to see this wonder and to ring the holy old at that holy stable. We are the ones who keep Christmas, Christmas is what we want it to be. Christmas is loveliness, happiness, singing, laughter, giving, and sharing, if we will make it so. May this season be a time of rebirth and renewal, a time of happiness and joy. Let there be light and warmth, and let us be their bearers. Go in peace. Amen. But do join us for coffee hour next door.
Bells on bobtails ring,